I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Yes or no? Did you ever take banned substances to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
I had no prior knowledge of the planned assault on Nancy Kerrigan.
I am deeply sorry for my irresponsible and selfish behavior I engaged in.
Hey, welcome everybody into Oops the Podcast. This is Francis, as always, joined by my dear friend and co-host Giulio.
Yo, yo, yo.
How are you, pal?
What's going on?
We have a splendid guest today. He has written for the Academy Awards. He has written for Saturday Night Live. He's done Late Night with Seth Meyers. Nimesh Patel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm winded, but I'm good. I made it here.
You know, it's funny.
We appreciate it, man.
No.
I gave that intro and I spoke so quickly, and then Nimesh has this ability to make me realize how fast I'm speaking.
Oh, really? Because I talk slow.
You are the most relaxed speaker and deliverer of words that I have ever met in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
I gotta do drugs in front of you more often. Last time I saw Giulio, we were at Ricky's wedding, and I was on shrooms. I think I'd taken like a half a dose from a friend, and I was off the rails. I danced the whole night. Like, I sweat through my suit, but I was talking to Giulio for like, it had to be like 20 minutes. Yeah, but like, just like, man. 'Cause he was going, he ordained the wedding, so he had this card that said, I will never forget. I don't remember his name on the card, but the tagline for his ministry or whatever was, you do the smooching, I'll do the paperwork. And for some reason, that made me laugh so hard. It didn't rhyme. It's the most confident fucking thing I'd ever
Dude, I love how much you appreciated that.
It's so good.
Because everyone was trying to get me to change it. And I'm like, guys, this isn't supposed to be a good business card.
It was, though. That's the thing.
There you go, right?
You know, it's like, you ever see those like shitty commercials that like, they'll do for like the Detroiters do like those goofy commercials. It was like that. It was so perfect. Like it just said who he was. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah. It sticks with you because of how bad it is.
Dude, I brought down hundreds of them.
But it was so good. You know, it's like so bad it was good. It was fucking brilliant.
I was really hoping you were going to rhyme with something with smooching. I needed that for the
I do the paperwork.
Dude, everyone said that exact thing. Like, you should rhyme it. But like, I was worried that it wasn't going to seem like a joke. Yeah. So I tried to make it seem like one as much as possible. And I think even some of like the older people at the wedding were like, this is very nice.
I'm trying not to hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
That's great.
That was a good
You have a great story. I was just reading your Wikipedia page.
Oh, shit.
And tell me if any of this is not correct.
Okay.
But you were discovered by Chris Rock at a show in Brooklyn.
The word discovered is a bit strong, only because what came of it was I got to write for him for the Oscars, and we've stayed, like, he'll call me from time to time about like, hey, I'm doing this. Do you want to be involved or whatever? But at that point, I've been doing comedy for 5 years.
Yeah.
I think, right? It was 2015. It was like a summer of 2015 that happened. And all credit to Chris. I still carry that chip on my shoulder. Like, Chris Rock told me I was funny. Who the fuck can say anything else to me, you know, like.
But in a way, it's not as if you hadn't been discovered yet.
No, I mean, that was it went from, that was like
your first thing.
Yeah, I mean, that was the summer of my third rejection from JFL New Faces, and I was in a funk, and that was at Matchless that the stars sort of aligned, and that was one of those nights when I look back at it. I think now I've gotten pretty attuned to seeing when the stars are aligning. And when I think back at that night, the stars had aligned for that night. Like, I was in a low. I was like, fuck, I didn't get JFL. And at that point, I thought that mattered. And I was like, at Matchless, and my job that I was working in finance was my CEO had just been let go, and it was like a 6-person office. So it didn't bode well for what was going to happen with the office and my job. And this was a job I'd been at for probably, I want to say 2 years. And it was a job where they knew I was doing comedy And so I had work-life balance, but I was also doing interesting stuff. I was flying to Africa to look at investment opportunities, which was very cool to me. And I wasn't making buku money or anything, but it was a cool job. And that was about to end, and it ended like 6 months later. But I was in such a weird spot. And then Chris was coming to see someone, but Chris was late. And normally Matchless... you never.
Did you ever go to Matchless?
You never went to Matchless, but Matchless, notoriously one of the hardest rooms in New York. And it was my show, mine, Che, and Denny's, but I would bomb there constantly. And Chris was late, so Langston, he was there to see, couldn't go up, and no other comic was there. And so I went up, and Kevin McCaffrey had just went up before me and leveled the room. Like destroyed, and that never happens. And I went up after him. I was like, and as I'm about to go up, Chris is right here. I'm like, now I have to go up. Chris is here. I have to go up and crush. Went up, did well. I heard Chris laugh, and that was it for me. I was blacked out. Did like 10 minutes, and then left, and immediately was just like, oh shit. And then Chris came out after he watched Langston. I was like, hey man, you're really funny. I was like, you're fucking Chris Rock, dog. And that, I mean, I want to say I was discovered then, but it felt like, I'm the shit now, you know? And then when I didn't get JFL or whatever, it was like, whatever, dude, doesn't fucking matter. Chris Rock just told me I was funny. What does anyone know? Yeah. You know?
That's very cool.
Yeah, what came of that for Langston? Well, how did that happen?
So Langston was working with a production company that they wanted to get Chris attached to something to help, like, if Chris EPs something, it's golden, right?
Right.
And so Chris wanted to see who he was going to be working with. Right. And I'm not sure what happened with that pilot, but Langston also ended up writing for the Oscars that night.
Wow! So it was fucking way. And he has also, that was a moment for his career, I feel, because I remember he was around and he was like doing it, hanging out, trying to find his way, and he found his fucking way.
I mean, Langston has always been destined for greatness, and it's good to see him doing awesome things. But I'm not sure if that was his first thing, but it was definitely for all of us. I remember there was a Comedy Central New York Comedy Festival rap party or whatever, and that was in November, and that was when me, Langston, Michelle, Langston Kerman, and Michelle Wolf, we'd all, maybe that morning or that week, received an email from Chris's head writer for the Oscars saying, hey, Chris wants you to write for the Oscars. Wow. If you're getting this email, you are writing for the Oscars. And I saw Michelle's name in the email. I saw Langston. I was like, we all saw each other that night at the party. I just remember the three of us being like, it was so crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a fun night.
And then you guys all got nominated for an Emmy for it
well. We got a WGA nomination. I'm not sure if we got Emmy nominated, but I mean, regardless, it was
your Wikipedia page would say otherwise.
Well, my Wikipedia, the Emmy came from SNL. The Emmy nomination was from SNL.
Wow.
Yeah, sorry.
Stupid of me.
Dude. So you're like, theoretically, you should be able to get writing jobs for the rest of your life.
That's what I thought would happen post the Oscars, right? Like so the Oscars was January 2016. That was right. The Oscars, I was supposed to fly out to LA like the first week of February, like February 1st, to help Chris start running a set and writing sketches and whatever for the Oscars. And my finance job ended like January 28th, 2016. So it was just like, again, stars aligned, perfect sort of timing, because I would have had to quit and then not collect unemployment if had I quit. But luckily I was laid off from that job, so then I could go to the Oscars, collect that check, and then afterwards collect unemployment
if I paid. That's
right.
Awesome.
And so the Oscars were, most of February was consumed by Oscars, right? Just watching movies and watching Chris run his monologue. And then once the Oscars happened, it was February 28th or something that year. And after that, I was like, went back home. I still remember the Oscars were on a Sunday. And that night I was at like the governor's ball. You know, they have a big party after the Oscars.
Super elite.
And I was like, this is crazy. There's Aaron Rodgers. There's, I don't know who else was around. I was just in such a blur. And then the next day I went to the Comedy Store open mic and like ate a slice of pizza by myself. And so once I flew back to New York, I'm like, all right, cool. Where are these writing jobs? I'm ready. Let's do this shit. and then nothing happened. And I'm like, all right, did I not capitalize this on this right? Or is this not as big of a deal as I thought it would be? Because to me, it wasn't just the Oscars. It was directly hired by Chris Rock to do that.
Right.
And so I thought that was like, I mean, that should be a key to the city, the key to the Comedy City, you know? And that didn't play out that way. But I wrote for Hassan Minaj's
White House Correspondents' Dinner.
The year before I did that, but the year before that, he had to give the address to the Congressional Correspondents' Dinner.
Oh.
And that was that's like the trial run for White House Correspondents.
Mm-hmm.
And so he hired me and a few other people to help him write for that. And so that, I'm not sure if that was a function of writing for Chris, but because I've known Hassan for 15, 20 years now. Before I started comedy, I knew him. But
Really?
yeah, that's another sidebar of that. But so I did that for April. So that kind of held me over for that month. And then I was looking for like advertising jobs because I thought it would make perfect sense, right? I wrote for the Oscars, very pithy jokes, like quick. I've watched every fucking movie. I can write jokes. I thought, what's the natural sort of family job next to like writing jokes is writing copy. I thought, okay, I have this Oscars on my resume. I should be able to write for, Wyden and Kennedy or whatever. That didn't plan out. Like everyone's like, you need a portfolio and you need this and that. I'm like, I went to here's my Oscars ticket. And then that didn't play out. And then my manager got me a job at Comedy KO, Comedy Knockout, which was on True
Damien?
TV. Yeah, with Damien.
Is that show still on?
No. It lasted, I think, 3 seasons, but I was there for one over the summer. And I was like, okay, I guess like I was contemplating going back into being in finance, working as an assistant and just like making whatever so I could pay the bills and do comedy the way I was doing. And then once I got that Comedy KO job, that summer I also got passed at The Cellar. And that was, I think, a function of the visibility that being hired by Chris. Because I was recommended by a comic who knew him and saw me on the street one day. She's like, you just worked for Chris? I was like, yeah. She was like, I'm going to wreck you at The Cellar. I was like, sick.
It's amazing.
Every time I hear a story like that, it makes me want to fucking kill myself.
Why?
Because that's how I envision it happening for me, but nobody's coming up to me on the street.
Just give it some time.
The only people I see on the street are people who steal my fucking bike.
Dude, I'll tell you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I saw that.
You see that shit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that seems like it was your fault. Who parks the city?
Totally. You know who does? A person who believes in the world.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
You fool. I'll steal your wallet right now. It's right there.
Got some cash from there. Doing okay.
Just to teach you a lesson.
I do want to back up a few steps
Sure.
on this story of your life because it's fascinating to me. You went to NYU, went to the Stern School of Business.
Yeah, the undergrad school, yeah.
And you graduated with a degree in business
finance, yeah.
and then went into finance.
Yeah.
Aziz Ansari also
NYU.
went to NYU Stern.
Yep, marketing.
And graduated and then got into comedy.
He was doing comedy while he was at NYU, from what I understand.
Right.
Like, because I remember seeing him. I think I might have been a freshman. And he might have just graduated because I don't think we were on campus at the same time, but he still lived in New York or whatever. I just remember seeing him at Kmart. Like I was going up the escalators, he was going down them. I'm like, yo, that's Aziz. But he was Human Giant famous.
Human Giant, yep.
And that was one of my favorite sketch
I love
shows.
that show.
And so he was already doing comedy. And when I think back at my time at NYU, I'm like, I should have just been doing fucking comedy the whole time. But yeah, so I graduated 09, 08, was unemployed for like a year and change. Found comedy in August of 09. And then I was like, I have to move to New York to do this. Because luckily my parents lived in Jersey, so I could live at home and commute while I made no money. But then at some point, I was like, I need to be in the city all the time because I'm missing out on so much shit comedy-wise.
Totally. I have a similar timeline. I was in Boston for college. Not as much like but there's this comedy scene there.
For sure.
And I look back and I'm like, why the fuck was I not? Why was I wasting all that time? I just did the same exact thing. I like knew about Eddie Murphy and Chris Rock, and I would watch that. And I thought it was funny, and I was like, oh, maybe I could. But like, I never thought it was a thing I could do, and I didn't know anybody else. Like, I didn't know any of the other. I didn't know who Bill Burr was. I didn't know shit. It's a crazy thing.
Yeah, fucking so stupid. I think everything I've done has been dumb. What the fuck was I doing?
Well,
It worked out, it
you're
worked
poised then to be on Oops the podcast.
Yeah. Oops to all of college.
Do you regret getting a college degree in light of where you are now?
No, I don't think I would be where I'm at if I hadn't. It's hard to say I regret anything. Obviously you can backfill a lot of things and wish you did things differently, but up until August of 2009, I was on a path to be a doctor or a financier. Like that was what I thought I should be doing or would be doing, and it just didn't play out that way. Probably the biggest oops in that sense is like not dropping. I was also pre-med while I was at NYU, so I transferred from the school of the College of Arts and Sciences, the sort of general program, to the undergrad program my sophomore year. And I should have just dropped pre-med at that point. But I didn't. That's probably a big oops. Like, fuck, why the fuck did I do this for?
Because it was so hard and time consuming.
Yeah, it consumed a lot of time. It definitely was detrimental to my GPA. I think I got a C plus in Orgo 1.
I was going to say organic chemistry is always the one that kills people.
That killed me. And it was also, I was going through personal shit with my girlfriend at the time. So it was like a lot was weighing on me and I wasn't focused on school in the very least, and finance classes are supposed to be easy. But my Orgo like dropped me poorly, and it kind of affected everything I was doing. And then once I dropped Orgo 1 or Orgo 2, I didn't take it my junior year. I was like, I just wasted all this time and money doing all this bullshit when I could have been focused. But had I not done that, maybe I would have gotten like a banking job, and maybe I would have been a banker, and maybe this would be my apartment, you know?
There you go. Dude, it's a great point. I mean, I think failing our way towards where we wanted to be, whether we intentionally did it or not, is a very important thing. So now you wrote for SNL for one season?
One season, season 43.
That's pretty cool. How did that happen?
It was a good time. I mean, I've known Che for a very long time, and
that's Mike Che, everybody. Michael Che.
He hired me effectively to help write on Update, because before that, Drew Michael had the job, and before that, I think it was their third season being co-anchors on Colin and Che's third season being co-anchors on Update, and I think they just were kind of finding their footing, and having known Che for at this point 11 years, but at that point 8 or 7 or whatever, he just thought I could help aggrandize his voice.
And were you at 30 Rock every day, the way that, grinding out the way that they do?
Update's schedule is different.
Okay.
The sketch writers have a wild schedule, in that, Monday they'll come in at like 4, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are like wild days for them. So Sunday, Monday is like their chiller days.
What's wild? Like
a lot of them, I think for sketch, they would show up at like, from what I remember, it varied for a lot of them, but on average like 4 p.m. But they would stay till like 4 or 5 a.m. and then go home, get some sleep if they were in the position to do so, and come back by noon for table read, where the sketches would be read, and then that would last all day. At night they would make the decisions for what sketches were going to make it. Thursday, Friday was rewriting and the sketches being produced. So set being designed, hair and makeup being designed, who else needs to be in the sketch, like blocking, directing, all that kind of stuff. And then Thursday through Saturday up until showtime was all that was happening, like rewrites. And it's such a well-oiled machine. What's that?
Like sleeping there?
Sometimes? I'm sure people slept there. So Update schedule was more like, all right, well, we'll come in at like 10 a.m. It was like 10 to 8, 10 to 9, except on Fridays we would stay there forever because Che and Joe are also head writers, so they would be so tied up with sketch stuff that once all the sketch stuff was done, then they would have time to work on their jokes and like write Update stuff. So
crazy.
It was nuts.
that position you say Drew Michael had it before you, and then you had it. Is that a 1 year kind of like rotating
Oh
gig?
no, I think it just didn't work out for myself or Drew. Drew, for whatever his reasons, that didn't work out, and for me, it didn't work out. Like I probably had like a 5% hit rate with jokes.
Got it.
So because I'm not a skilled non stand-up joke writer when it comes to like the kind of jokes that you see on Fallon and even on obviously on Update, like the one-off jokes. This story happened, therefore, what's the joke for that? I'm not skilled at that. That's a skill you got to develop, and I don't have that skill. It's not a skill I've developed. And with Update, you're either writing for Che or Jost, who are very already kind of their own voices and very much defined by who they are. And so to fit into that was difficult. I definitely found it difficult to be, because I'm a stand-up, so I'm writing jokes how I would write, how I would deliver things, and hoping that they will see what I wrote. And that didn't play out the way it did. So I was let go. Well, you don't like get like fired. You're just told you're not getting renewed. And I was told I wasn't getting renewed like 2 hours before I had to run my set for Seth.
Oh wow,
I was like, what the fuck?
That's crazy.
I remember it was sitting on my sofa. I get the call from my agent, say, "Hey, you're not going to get renewed for SNL." I was like, "All right, I can't even think about this because in 2 hours from now, I have to go run my set that I'm going to do for the booker 4 days later on Seth." Like it was probably, I did Seth on July 16th or something. So it might have been July 12th or something that I got the call at like 5 p.m. and at 7 p.m. the booker was going to come see me just to make sure things were tight and whatever, give any final notes. And then after that, I was like, fuck, I didn't get renewed. I was in a funk for a while, but I couldn't process it. Yeah.
So as someone who has come in and out of these writing jobs, right? How have you learned to deal with periods of not making salary versus to, have these jobs? I mean, do you feel that you can sustain a good income even though it is obviously ups and downs?
I never feel comfortable, if that's the question. It's never, after SNL, I was quite comfortable. Me and my girl were living large. Like after parties, I would be like buying dinner for like all my cousins. Shit, like, yeah, we going out. It was fun. I loved it. I don't regret a minute of it. I don't regret a minute of blowing all the money that I definitely blew on while I was at the show, because I didn't see it ending. And it was also the first time I had like real money that I felt good about. While I was working in finance, it was decent money, but I wasn't like cool. But the SNL money just felt cool.
Yeah.
It's a different, it was a different vibe when you got that check. And so once that ended, I knew you would still get residuals from time to time. So that kept me afloat. Then I did Comedy Cellar, had their This Week at the Cellar. So that kept me afloat. I was also working at the Cellar a bit more, and random gigs, like Columbia happened 6 months after SNL, but that was a decent check. So like random things, random stars would align for me to make it through the next 2 months or whatever. But I'd also put away at SNL a good amount of money, just like enough to be like, okay, if anything happens, I can cover rent for myself and my fiance for a year at least, right? Like I needed to do that.
Yeah.
And once I hit that, I was like,
yeah.
In hindsight, like, what the fuck was I doing, dude? Did I need $800 worth of jeans like all the time? Like I would just buy shit that you just think, okay, this is cool, I'm gonna get that, and like $300 dinners, random, just Uber rides, but not Uber XL, Uber Black. Like, what the fuck am I doing? You just live like you're the king of the world.
You're just like, whatever, fuck it.
But I never, for the year that I wasn't working, I was definitely anxious. There was definitely anxiety of just like, all right, I feel okay, but how long is this okay gonna last? And then while I was up for writing jobs that didn't pan out, I was like, what the fuck? I didn't get that job. So there was definitely like levels of anxiety, and then I ended up at Full Frontal with Samantha Bee as a field producer, and that started in June of.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's where you are now?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I ended up there in June of last year of 2019, and I've been there since, and it's been great. But I'm not sure. I'm always thinking now I'm of the mind everything's gonna end.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, there's no more like $300, $400, $500 bottle nights of, you know, like I don't do that anymore. I didn't do that at SNL. It's more like $300 dinners or whatever, but I don't do that anymore. It's more just like being prudent.
What does field producer mean? Are you a correspondent?
No.
Or?
So the third act is the field piece where you go interview somebody or explore a story outside of the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll pitch ideas about, that's like the piece that aired yesterday is about healthcare in America. And it's been a piece that derived from my stand-up of how fucked up American healthcare is. And I wanted to relay a story that I had, which is true. I had an asthma attack like January of 2017, I guess, because I smoked one of those vape pens. And like I smoked it to the end, basically. And so the end is where I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand is there's some kind of metal thing that like heats up to heat the oil up, and it has some residue on it that when you smoke, it comes out, it looks like you're smoking weed, but it's actually you're smoking like tin or whatever. And I smoked it to the end. I was like, well, it keeps hitting, so why the fuck would I not keep smoking it? And then one point, I remember like walking upstairs and I was like, I can't breathe normally. Like this is not good. And then that night, I was like afraid to go to sleep because I didn't know if I would be able to breathe. And me and my girls, I was like, let's just go to the hospital. And I was there for maybe an hour and a half, and I got the bill 2 weeks later, and it was like 6 G's.
Jesus.
And I was there for 2 hours. It wasn't like a flop popping night for them. They didn't like go out of the way to see me, you know. And I got the bill. It was 6 G's, and I called them because having had a year before that, I had hernia surgery, and I didn't have insurance at that point. And my mom just asked the doctor, hey, like he doesn't have insurance. Can we just pay this amount of money and you'll forgive the rest of the charges? And the doctor was like, yeah, sure. You know,
that's great.
So that was in my brain when I called the hospital. I was like, look, I don't have $6,000. I can't afford to pay this. And they literally said, how much do you have? And I said, nothing. And they were like, all right, you don't have to pay anything. Mind you, I had enough money to pay some portion of the charge, but
you don't have to pay anything.
They don't have to pay anything. Just write us a letter.
This is how the emergency room works, dude.
But that's the thing, like if something's in my head, what inspired the piece, like if something they say costs $6,000, but they let go for $0, it was never worth $6. Right. That's just simple. No one's gonna do that.
But in a way, maybe you're financing all the people who can't pay for anything.
Right. And I also know that hospitals have a certain amount of money that they effectively just write off for poor people who can't afford to pay anything. And sure, I am fine. And sure, there are rich people who pay those bills and insurance companies that pay those bills so that poor people who don't have money can't afford to go to those places. But at the same time, it should be sort of normalized where everyone should be paying a certain amount. Like there's no reason anything should cost $6,000 when you're in there for 20 minutes.
Right.
And so that the piece that I put out was like, I wanted to pitch like, how can we talk about healthcare this way? And ended up pitching that healthcare is basically like Price is Right. And so we designed the sort of Price is Right game set. We interviewed a doctor about healthcare, and it took 2 months to put together from all the research I did to airing it finally. But that's what we do at the show. That's what my role is.
That's really cool.
It's cool.
Dope,
I want to see that.
Yeah.
Can we find that on YouTube?
It's on my Instagram right now.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, please.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool, bro.
And you're featured in the piece? Or?
No, I'm not featured in the piece. So it's all behind the scenes.
Yeah,
Sam is in the piece. And we interviewed this doctor by the name of Dr. Juar, who is a physician out in Long Island, but he writes about healthcare pricing and doctors and what have you. And it was very cool to do. Met real patients who have gone through like fucking wild stories. I thought my shit was wild, and met some lady who got charged $101,000 for a surgery. The insurance paid like $65,000, but the doctor wanted an additional $35,000 and went after her for it. Just like wild shit like that, you know?
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, the healthcare in America is the most fucked up thing there is.
It's just so arbitrary.
The most fucked up
Really
system
annoying.
in the world. We spent. I get to
We spend the most money too. Right?
$3.6 trillion last year in 2018 on healthcare. That's how average 11 grand per person in America gets spent on healthcare. And the cleanest way I can explain as to why healthcare is so fucked up in America is because hospital groups, doctors, etc., like providers and insurers are all working to make sure they make the most money. So
Right.
the way pricing works is doctors, insurance groups will negotiate on a price for everything, right?
Mhm.
And whatever neither agrees to pay, they just pass on to the consumer.
Mhm.
So we get the higher premiums, we get the deductibles that are higher because these two pricks couldn't agree on what they want to fuck us with.
Right.
And that's all it is. That
Wow.
Everyone's just passing the buck to us, and
Right.
we just keep getting fucked and fucked and fucked. The government needs to step in and say, these are the prices that you can charge. There's
Right.
some leeway depending on how good your service is or whatever.
Right.
But you can't charge $8 for a Band-Aid. You know, like, there's this story on Vox, which really pissed me off. It's a lady went into the emergency room, spent 10 minutes because she thought she needed stitches for a cut, ended up just needing a Band-Aid. The Band-Aid, when she got her bill, was $7. It's $7 for a finger Band-Aid. It's like, you can't pay in Band-Aids because then, like I'll just go and be like, I have all the money in the world. These are $7 Band-Aids, right? Like,
Movie theater prices, dude.
yeah, it's fucked.
That's
It's
fucked.
so fucked. But anyway, that's the piece that I just put on.
That's
But
very
that's
cool,
that's
man.
what I do at the show.
Cool. I'm reading this book called Dreamland about the opioid epidemic.
Oh shit.
And how, the pharmaceutical companies really toned down the addictive tendencies of the painkillers through the 1970s and 1980s
Mhm.
and started treating, because everyone knew they were addictive from when they came out in 1920s. They were all derived from morphine.
Right.
And everyone knew morphine was incredibly addictive. But then people started coming out with these new drugs, the oxycodons, the Percocets, all that. And everyone was abusing them. And people were saying, well, this is crazy. They're very addictive. You can't put these out.
Right.
But what happened was they had been addictive and they were only used really to treat terminal patients for a
Right.
long time. The idea was that someone has cancer, they're dying of cancer. We might as well make it as peaceful for them as possible. It doesn't really matter if they get addicted
Right.
because they're
'Cause
going to
gonna
die.
Right.
And it was seen as a humane drug for a long time.
Hmm.
And then a couple studies came out that said, well, we've released these time release pills of oxycodone, right? That instead of it being that intense high for a bit that then washes away and leaves the user craving it again, it now releases it in your blood system over the entire day. Less high highs, less low lows. This is a safe alternative.
Right.
And now we're going to start using it to treat chronic pain.
Ah.
And everyone started coming in with back issues, joint issues, and they were asking it. And people were fucking prescribing
Yeah.
oxycodone like it was Advil.
Right.
And this led to, of course, the heroin boom of the
Right.
1990s.
Yeah.
Because I don't mean to go on too long, but this is insane. Okay. Old people, like senior citizens, were getting prescribed oxycodone and selling it to teenagers for a huge markup and paying their retirements.
Can't knock the hustle, dude.
How insane is that?
Don't hate the player.
And what happened
It's
was
amazing.
there were these groups in Mexico that were coming from these tiny villages that would come in to cities like Denver, Portland, Oregon,
Yeah.
etc. And they would develop the beeper system. The driver would go out, meet the person, and sell them the heroin, the black tar that they were bringing up from Mexico. And there was no violence. None of these guys had guns, and they ran a safe business.
Yeah.
And it spread to all the cities, and everyone was getting hooked on heroin because they couldn't afford oxycodone.
Really?
anymore. Yeah.
That's why?
That's what happened.
So how was that presented as an alternative? They're like, hey, if you can't find this, like you'll love
Because
this.
the opiate high opiate, right?
Right.
Coming from opium, the
Right.
poppies, right? It was from the
Which
bulb
is
of
where
the
heroin
poppy.
comes from, right?
And heroin, it gives
Right.
you the same high,
Yep.
effectively. It's a
like
version of it.
20 times cheaper. And
Yeah.
Right.
You don't have to go to the doctor to get it.
But it had been around. Like I remember all the like jazz musicians used to use it and stuff. Like at what point?
Yes, heroin had been around, but this is the crazy part. It wasn't used by white middle class kids.
No.
It was a
Right.
drug that was used in New York City.
That's why they
by
care about
poor
it now.
people. And then
That's why
all
they got
the
those fucking
painkillers
Narcan signs.
started infiltrating high schoolers
Interesting.
in middle class neighborhoods, in like working neighborhoods, all this shit.
And that was the 90s.
And that's when the kids started going from oxycodone over to heroin, and
Gotcha.
people were dying all the time.
Right.
And that's why now it's becoming so talked about.
That's the
That's
only
crazy.
reason. That's the only
Interesting.
reason Trump has made it a national crisis is because middle class white kids are dying from it.
Yeah.
And it's like because people have been dying from heroin forever and
Right.
crack and all that, but now it's like I have a bit about it, but about the heroin epidemic. But it's like they have signs about, yo, fuck Narcan, use Narcan, save a life. They want like us
Yeah.
to like if we see someone passed out, put a heroin antidote in someone's
Right.
nose.
Right.
Naloxone
Right.
too.
Yeah,
right?
and
It's
Naloxone.
like-
It's
But dude, get this: these Mexican drug dealers who were seen as being like a cleaner drug dealer than the Bloods and the Crips, and who were selling crack and killing each other over drug territory. These guys figured out to go to methadone clinics.
Yeah.
Which is where all the addicts who were trying to kick the habit were going, because methadone is an opiate, but it is it's sort of what the time release oxycodone was meant to do, which is that
Right.
it keeps you a little bit more level, and you only need one dose in the beginning of the day to get you through the day.
That's why everybody's out there 7 a.m.
And they would come to these fucking methadone clinics in all these beat up towns and start selling people heroin again. I mean, it was, dude.
Dude,
It's,
that's dark.
doctors
Yeah.
our doctors don't get enough blame. I don't think. Like I
Right.
doctors were incentivized by the big pharmaceutical companies to sell, to really peddle oxycodone. And a lot of them, they were looking at medical research at the time that had come out supporting the idea that these opiates were not as addictive as they had been told they were in the 1970s.
Yeah, but at some point it turned into just pill mills. Everyone's like, okay, well, we can
Correct.
just prescribe this and we'll get X amount of money from the pharmaceutical company or the insurer, and we don't care. These
Right.
people just keep coming back in. They technically still have pain, so we'll just give them medicine. I
Right.
just remember, there's so much there I
Yeah.
like furious about. But
They
yeah.
used to have these
interesting.
things called CMEs, which are called continuing medical education, which is where doctors and nurses and whatnot would be sent to very glitzy spas and golf resorts for a weekend conference where they were meant to hear from specialists in the drug industry who would basically talk and give speeches that led to the conclusion, as always, that the drug they were selling was not addictive. Meanwhile, the doctors would be playing golf, be getting, handed these big bags of Pro V1 Titleist
Right,
golf
right,
balls
right.
branded with, oxycodone, your friend or whatever.
Right.
And they'd come away from this feeling all fucking pampered. And of course they were going to be writing scripts for
Absolutely.
oxycodone.
Yeah.
It was crazy, dude.
What a time.
Yeah.
But yeah, healthcare fucked. Maybe I'm curious to know if I could do something about opioids on the show, but it is a wild thing to think about.
Dude,
Yeah.
yeah. It seems like the logical
Yeah.
next step.
Yeah. What time we got? Okay.
We probably need to wrap up.
Yeah. I should
We
go
didn't
soon.
even get to the Columbia thing, but obviously everyone knows you from that.
What was the question?
Well, the question I had was, did you feel that at, let's say, like an Ivy League school,
Mhm.
there's a higher tendency for the students to be that woke versus places that are, I don't know, state schools or bigger schools?
Short answer, probably. Long answer, I'm not fully sure. I mean, after the incident at Columbia, like students at Harvard invited me to come up and like talk about and do whatever I wanted, like have a free speech set.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure there's whatever was happening in those Columbia students' mind. There's the opposite exists at another Ivy League school or even at Columbia for sure. I have done state schools like Ohio State and Alaska and had a blast.
No problem. I was going to say that.
Yeah.
I played UConn, last year. Like all these places, there's no issue.
But it's a very different group of.
It depends.
It's a different group of people. I think that go to those schools, obviously, and I think when you have even mine was even within the subset of Columbia students, it was a very different subset, right? It was the Asian American Alliance. And even that, majority of those students, I still feel like were on my side. I know a lot of people hit me up from that school. 3 kids from Columbia even came down to my show after that show. Like, hey, man, we're sorry. We're not all like them. Like,
That's
I know.
fucking embarrassing.
I'm like, I don't think you're all like that at all. And I don't think most Ivy League schools are like that. I would hope not, because these are the forefront of our education, right? But my experience has been at state schools, people are a lot cooler and chiller. And now when if I do a college gig, I will talk about Columbia almost immediately just to address it. And I will tell the joke that I told that got me kicked off. And then the air is clear.
Mhm.
This is who you're getting from,
Right.
this is who you hired. And if you don't like it, it doesn't really matter. You just have to suffer through it. But I'm not out here spewing hate speech or anything, you know?
Certainly not.
So,
And you went on Rogan.
oh yeah,
To talk about
shout
that.
out Joe Rogan.
You've had. Would you say that whole incident in the end actually benefited you?
Oh yeah, for sure. It was definitely a net positive. I didn't think it would be anything but net positive. It was annoying in the moment for the 2 or 3 weeks after, and it is. It's not annoying, but it's like a thing. I don't know what the exact word for it is. That's not necessarily what I wanted to be known for, and I don't think that
You're
is
not
right.
No.
But it is. It was in the moment like stressful. Like people, I'm getting Google alerts. I had to delete my Google alerts and like texts and all this kind of shit. And that was like a taste of fame, of like the infamy or whatever.
Yeah,
Fame
notoriety.
sucks.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this shit, I hate this shit. I don't want to fucking be in people's minds like this all the time. It seems fucking annoying.
Yeah, you were being used almost as like, the prized cow at the middle of a tug of war between the two sides.
For sure. I was like, "Duh, I don't care about either of y'all."
Yeah, exactly.
It's like everyone wanted to harp on free speech and being canceled, and like, and I'm not sure if I said this to Joe, but I definitely said it on stage. It was like, freedom of speech is not under attack when a comedian gets kicked off stage. It's like when Jamal Khashoggi gets murdered and no one says anything.
Right.
That's when freedom of speech is under attack.
Absolutely.
That's being canceled. I got annoyed for
That's
2
being
weeks.
canceled.
Literally,
I got annoyed for 2 weeks.
Yeah, right.
I'm wearing brown privilege sweatshirt in front of 2 very white dudes.
Yeah, guilty.
I'm living life, man. You know, it's
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
Absolutely fantastic. Well, thank
very
you
cool.
so much for joining us today, Nimesh. Where can we find you on social media? What
I'm
do you
at
have coming
Finding Nimesh. That's my handle at Patel 2020 is where my album is. Patel2020.com. They'll link you to my Spotify album. Yeah, that's it, man. Just out here living.
up? Hell yeah. G,
Cool,
anything coming up?
Yeah, February 17th, DC Improv, 18th at UConn.
Oh,
Wow.
I
nice.
just
Love it.
Brought that up. That should be cool.
What are you doing at Improv? Lounge or the main room or?
I don't know.
Oh,
I think main room.
that's gonna be fucking fun, man.
I've never done it.
Oh, it's a blast. Oh, December 12th, I'm at Fat Black Pussy. December 12th. February 12th, I'm at Fat Black Pussycat, 10:30 p.m. doing an hour or a marathon show. I haven't decided what it's going to be yet,
Hell yeah.
but I'm raising money for Doctors Without Borders, which is my
cool.
favorite charity.
I love
Amazing.
that
It's
charity.
a great
Yeah.
one. What about you, Francis?
Very cool. I'm at Helium Philly, March 5th to the 7th.
Nice.
You can get tickets for that, francisellis.com. Otherwise, I'll be at Skankfest South and Moon Tower. And you guys can check all my shit out at Francis CC Ellis.
Sweet.
Awesome, man.